Hey, EGN 150 class. I wanted to take a second and add a little bit of detail to the first modeling assignments. And in particular, one of your colleagues asked in our kickoff session earlier today about the grading of the models. Like how am I going to grade the models? What am I going to be looking at? What's important to consider? And I thought this was a very good point. And after I got done with a lot of the stuff that was going on today, I thought I would come back and make a video that kind of addressed this point because it's very important. You need to know how you're going to be graded on the assignment. And basically, I'm going to be looking at your modeling, at your models, to see if you did the modeling properly, efficiently, and effectively as a 3D parametric fusion model. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that I'm not just going to look at the end result. I'm not just going to look at your model and say, yep, you've gotten the dimensions correct. So 10 out of 10 or 100%. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how you created that model. And so I thought that it would be helpful to show you what I'm talking about. So I have a sketch of the frame guide. This is probably similar to what you've created so far. If you were following the tutorial video for that. And at this point you might think, okay, let's extrude that and let's start creating the final shape. But this is not what you should be extruding. All right. So what we need to do, the first thing that you need to understand is that we want to make our sketches fully constrained. And so that means two things. It means that we have to apply geometric constraints and we have to apply dimensional constraints, okay? Both in tandem, okay? So in this case, with the frame guide that we have here, with the sketch of the basic shape, I'm going to put on these dimensional and geometric constraints. And basically, I'm going to turn these blue lines into black lines. That's what I want to create. I want to turn each one of these blue lines into a black line because a black line tells me, or a black circle or whatever, a black shape, tells on a sketch tells me that the shape has been fully constrained or the object has been fully constrained. So let me go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. So first of all, for the outside dimension here, this is going to be a radius of 30. Okay, and the inner radius is going to be, well, it's actually not given as a radius. It's actually given as a diameter, 38.1 to 37.97 to 38.10. That's a tolerance dimension. So we can draw it within any of those ranges. I'm going to draw it as, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use math in this, right? So I'm going to put 38.1 divided by 2. Now you might ask yourself, why the heck would I do that? Why wouldn't I just use a calculator to do that? Well, this way it's going to potentially safeguard against me making a math error in my calculator. Okay, 38.1 divided by 2. And then there we go. Okay, so I'm letting Fusion do the math for me. Okay, rather than doing it by in my head. Let's go ahead and so we want to get the distance from here to here. That's going to be 107, 107. And now we see, and this is something that comes up a lot, we see that the geometry all of a sudden gets all messed up. like, oh my God, now what's going on here? When I'm working on a model like this and this happens, I do a couple things. First of all, I undo this, right? Because I don't want that kind of change to be taken into go into effect. Secondly, I'm going to delete this dimension, so I'm going to click on that and hit the delete key and get rid of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try. Basically, what happened is my model is too far out of the geometry, the dimensional constraints. So I'm going to pick on this, hold the left mouse button, and kind of drag this in like this, right? And so that's going to help me when I then attach the geometric constraints to have it, there we go, be a little bit more reasonable, because I don't want things to fly out of control here. So let's get the height right here. That is 41. So we go 41. All right. All right. So it's starting to look a little bit better. We can get the width across here, and that is 11. And we can get the height across here, and that is likewise 11. Let me show you something here. So before I do that, let me back up and do this. So I got the thickness here to be 11. Parametric modeling means that I can use parameters, or I can use functions, I can use equations. In the simplest form, what I would like to say is I'd like for the width of this to be equal to the width of this, right? So 11 here and 11 here. So what that means is I can go like this, right? Go to dimension, pick this object, and then click on that. And where it says, you know, hey, give me that dimension right there, I'm going to go over here and click on that. Notice that what it put in there was D6. What is this dimension? That is D6. So I'm driving the thickness of this with with this dimension. See how it says function 11? So now it's, if I change this, this will automatically change. All right. So that's a parameter that I've associated with that. This dimension from here to here is going to be 51, so we'll do 51. And notice that as I'm doing this, some of the lines are starting to turn black, meaning they're becoming constrained. Also, a rule of thumb, do not do math when you are assigning your geometric constraints. Always use the dimensions that are given, okay? This is a really important rule of thumb. Because what it does is it builds in it does two things. One, it eliminates simple math errors, right? So if you're doing calculations to figure out your geometric constraints, there's always a chance that you can make a mistake, okay? And then that enshrines that mistake in that model, all right? So we don't want that. The second thing is it hides dimensioning errors in the part that you're trying to replicate. So if I'm trying to draw this shape here, and the person that I'm taking this from, right, has made a mistake in their dimensioning, if I use the dimensions that they give me, I will find that mistake, right? If they are missing a dimension, if they have too many dimensions, whatever, I will find that mistake if I use their dimensions. All right, so always use the dimensions that are given. So let me see, what else do we have here? I'm missing this dimension right here in this. Okay, so I'm going to use a geometric constraint, right? So what I'd like to say is I want this line to be in plane with this line. So I'm going to go to collinear, and I want this to be collinear with that, right? And you see how that moved, right? Now I also want horizontal vertical. I want this line to be in line with this line right there. It's not going to take that. So because I already have that. So I'm going to, let's pick that again and go to, no, it's not going to let me do that. Sometimes you have to mess around with these, right? And I didn't plan this out beforehand because I wanted to be kind of a live, organic kind of model. So I'm going to, let's pick that and pick that. No. All right, so what I'm going to have to do is I think I'm going to, this horizontal vertical, what I'd like to do is assign that to that. There we go. Okay, so did you see what I did there? Let me back up because that's important. And believe me, this happens a lot, right? So I was trying to get this line or this line to be even with the origin. The origin is a really good point to reference in your models. But I wasn't able to get these lines to line up with this origin. So what I did was I made this point. I came over to this point and I said, hey, I want this point to be horizontal with that point. You see it moved, and notice when it did that, it made everything black, right? And look, the only thing that's left is this line right here, and the reason why is because it needs to be collinear with this line. So I go collinear, I want this to be collinear with that. And everything's black now. So that's a fully constrained sketch, and that's what we're aiming for. So I'm going to finish my sketch. I can go to this, and now I can extrude, and go here, and I can extrude it 48 like this. Okay, so so we can see in my timeline down here, I have a sketch, and if I go and edit the sketch is fully constrained. Okay, if it's not fully constrained, I'll be able to tell that it's not fully constrained. Let's go back here and let's unconstrain something. So let's, what am I going to do? What can I unconstrain? Let's just take this 107 dimension away. All right, so when I did that, notice this became unconstrained, right? And I'm going to take this 1905. Actually, let's take the 30 out. It really doesn't matter, but I'll take that out. So this is unconstrained, right? It's not fully constrained. This arc is still blue, and this line is still blue. Now the thing is, you can still extrude this, right? So you can still create the full model like this, okay? But when you do that, notice that what the sketch says right here. The sketch is well, just take a note of what that looks like, that word, okay? Now I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to edit the sketch, and I'm going to go back and assign a dimension right there, and I'm going to assign a dimension there, okay? And then I'm going to finish the sketch. Notice what the sketch says now. Notice that there is a lock next to it. Okay, before there was not a lock. Whoops, before there was no lock. No lock tells me that that's an unconstrained or not fully constrained sketch. Now when I see a lock, it's constrained. So when I'm looking through your models, I want to see locks when I expand your sketches. Okay, let's do a couple more here. So I can sketch on this surface right here, and you know, I'm not sure how Tyler did this. I'll show you how I might do this. I might draw a rectangle right like that, and then I might put a circle in from the center like this. There's a lot of different ways to draw this, people. So you know, it's as long as you use good technique. The width is 13. The height from here to here is, oops, it's not dimensioned that way, right? This is a good example, right? I tried to do the height from here to the center, the distance from the top edge of this to the center. But if I see in my model, it's actually, the 25 is actually from the bottom up. So you might be thinking, well, come on, Chuck. I mean, 41 minus 25 is going to give us that dimension. What is that? That's 17, 16. 16. That should be 16 millimeters. Why can't you just do 41 minus 25 equals 16 and put that in there? Well, yes, you could. Okay, you could. But then your sketch, and therefore your model, is not going to be a prototype of this design, this design intention, this design intent. All right, so we're not able to check this, right? So I don't want you to do that. I want you to say, nope, not going to do it that way. I'm going to do this shape from here to here and put in 25. Okay, and then we can do a midpoint. I'm going to say I want that to be, and now I'm going to hold the shift key down and move it, or excuse me, hold the control key. What am I going to do? Hold the shift down. There we go. Hold the shift down. Sorry, hold the shift down. And pick the midpoint of this side and get that to shift. And notice when I do that, everything turns black. All right. Now, I probably should trim this out, so I'm going to trim that. It's not going to change anything. I'm going to trim that. Oh, look at that. What happened? Well, what happened was when I trimmed that line, it took that dimension away. Okay, so be ready for that. That's not a big deal. It's like, oh, okay, let's just put that dimension back in there. It was because I was attaching it to the geometry of the line instead of the geometry of the circle. All right, and then I can go like this and do 6.5. And why, wait a second, why is it 13 up here and 6.5? Why do I need those two dimensions? Okay, well, I'll tell you why. Because I have not attached a geometric constraint between the circle and the line here. So whereas technically this would be okay, it's not really appropriate. In other words, what I really should have is I should have a tangent constraint between this circle and this edge. Now look at that. Now it goes in there. If I put that one in there, it's going to say it's over constrained, which, you know, so that's done now. That's fully constrained. I can finish that sketch. I can go here and I can extrude this. And how far do I want to extrude it? Whoops. Let's try that again. Extrude. Let's pick this shape right there. How far do I want to extrude it? Well, here's where we start to get a little nitpicky here. Technically, I could extrude it any distance as long as it's through that surface, 11 millimeters thick. Technically, what I want to do is I want to say I want you to cut through that that thickness, whatever that is, right? So maybe I come in later and change that thickness to 16. If I extrude this 15 and I change that dimension to 16, it's not going to extrude all the way through when I update the timeline. All right. So what I really should do is go to Extents and go to Object and say I want it to go all the way to that surface. Okay. So let's look at the sketch again. Look at that, fully constrained. Okay, both of them. All right. So you know, I'll leave it here. I think the rest of it is just going to be me going over the same points. Make sure that you, so what I'm going to be looking for is that your model is very efficient, that you have a sketch and then an extrusion or a revolution. In this case, it's all going to be extrusions. There's not any additional bodies that you've hidden. Hiding bodies is wrong. There's not any extra bodies that somehow are hidden. That you don't have some sketches that you've decided that you're not going to use. That all your sketches are fully constrained. So there's a lock on each one of these. In addition to all the features, right? So you have the fillets on this. And what is the fillet? The fillets are radius 2. Right, so you have fillets on all this. Let's go back here, repeat the fillet. We go with the radius of 2. Right, and we can do the same thing over here. Fillet with a radius of 2. And so on and so forth, right? So hopefully that helps with understanding how I'm going to be grading. I'm not just going to be looking at your model and say, yep, you got the model done. I'm going to be inspecting the model to make sure that your timeline shows a clear and efficient path to cleaning it, to completing the model, and that your browser over here has parts that are used in the model creation, that you don't have any extraneous parts, bodies and sketches, that you don't have sketches that are not constrained. Okay. And the last thing I'll say on this before we finish up is you can quite easily, there's 2 things you can do with Fusion. If you finish this model and you're watching this video and you're going, gosh darn it, now I got to fix this. Fusion is the easiest software to fix things with, because I can always go and right click over my sketch back here and go to edit sketch and then just fix it, right? I can also go to the sketch right here and go to edit sketch and fix it, right? So you can go back in time. That's the great thing about Fusion, is you can go back in time and say, oh wait, did I do that extrusion right? Right click over the extrusion, edit feature, and say, oh yeah, extent to object, or in this case I got the wrong one, but here, edit feature, extent to object. Yeah, I did it right. Okay. So you can go back through it and fix everything. Or at the very least, and maybe you're not going to like me for saying this, but this is absolutely the truth, and you'll find that as you get more and more practice with this, it'll be easier and easier. Draw the whole thing again. All right? Draw the whole thing again. If you do it the first time here and you feel like it's a little bit ugly and you didn't really follow directions very well and you kind of goofed up a few things, that's great. That's called practice, right? And not all practice is pretty. But when you repeat, when you do repetition on your practice, that's when you get better. So that's fine. Save this, right? And then close it. And then start another one. And, start again. And do it better this time. All right? And then submit the one that looks better. All right? So I hope that helps. I felt like it was necessary after our little meeting this morning. I felt like it was important. So now if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to help you out. All right. So be good. Talk to you soon. Bye.